The courtroom was tense, the air thick with anticipation. Judge Evelyn Kessler, a stern woman in her late 50s with a reputation for her unforgiving demeanor, peered down over her glasses at the young defendant. Her lips curled into a faint smirk as she addressed him. "Mr. Jason Carter," she began, her voice laced with condescension, "you've chosen to represent yourself in this case. Grand theft auto and resisting arrest are serious charges. Are you absolutely sure you don't want a real attorney? This isn't a game, young man." Jason, a wiry 18-year-old, stood up. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the ill-fitting gray suit he wore, a hand-me-down from his older brother. He looked like any other teenager who had made a mistake, nervous, out of place, and utterly unprepared. A few spectators chuckled softly. The prosecutor, a polished man in his 40s named Charles Brenner, couldn't hide his smirk. But when Jason spoke, his voice was steady. "Your Honor, I understand the seriousness of this situation. I've reviewed the evidence and believe I'm capable of defending myself." Judge Kessler raised a skeptical eyebrow. "Confidence is one thing, Mr. Carter. Competence is another. Let's see how far your self-taught legal skills take you." Brenner stood up, smoothing his tie. "Your Honor, the state is ready to proceed. We have eyewitness testimony and surveillance footage. This is a straightforward case." Jason's heart raced, but he kept his face calm. He had spent every free moment for the last 6 weeks poring over case law, evidence, and procedure. He wasn't just fighting for his freedom, he was fighting to prove that the system had made a mistake. As the prosecutor launched into his opening statement, Jason scanned the jury, a mix of indifferent and skeptical faces. He glanced at Judge Kessler, who had already begun doodling on her notepad. They all thought this was a joke, a waste of time, another dumb kid playing lawyer. But Jason was ready. Brenner called his first witness, Officer Raymond Collins, the arresting officer. A broad-shouldered man with a buzz cut, Collins took the stand and began recounting the events of that night. On the night in question, Collins began, "I received a call about a stolen black sedan. When I arrived, I saw the defendant leaning into the vehicle with what appeared to be a tool. I identified myself as a police officer and told him to stop. He ran, leading me on a brief chase before I caught him." Jason took meticulous notes. When his turn came, he approached the witness stand with a calm intensity. "Officer Collins," Jason began, "you said you saw me leaning into the driver's side window holding a tool. Can you describe exactly what you saw?" Collins nodded. "You were fumbling with wires. And how far away were you when you observed this?" "About 20 feet. Jason let the silence hang. 20 feet away, at night. "And you could see wires being fumbled with inside the car? Through the closed window?" Collins shifted slightly. "Yes." Jason walked to his table and picked up a photograph. He approached the stand. "Officer, please examine this photo of the car. Can you point to where the wires are located?" Collins examined the photo. "They're inside the dashboard." Jason turned to the jury. "Exactly. Inside the dashboard. Not visible through a closed window from 20 feet away." The gallery murmured. Brenner stood. "Objection, speculative." "Overruled," Judge Kessler said, her interest clearly piqued. "No further questions," Jason said, and returned to his table. Brenner called the next witness, Margaret Dorsey, the car's owner. A stern-faced woman in her 50s, she testified that her car had been stolen from outside her home. When it was Jason's turn to cross-examine, he approached gently. "Mrs. Dorsey, did you see anyone take the car?" "No. I was asleep." "And when the police recovered the car, was there any damage? Broken windows, forced locks?" "No. The car was intact." Jason paused. "So the car was taken without forced entry. Is it possible the person who took it had a key?" "I suppose," she said uncertainly. "Who has access to your car keys?" "Just me and my husband." Jason nodded. "Thank you. No further questions." He turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I would like to call Mr. Douglas Dorsey to the stand." Brenner objected. "Your Honor, this witness wasn't disclosed." "Your Honor," Jason countered, "his testimony is essential." Judge Kessler considered, then nodded. "Overruled. Call your witness." Douglas Dorsey took the stand, nervous and hesitant. "Mr. Dorsey, did you lend your car to anyone that night?" He glanced at his wife. "I let my nephew, Ryan, borrow it. He had a date." The courtroom buzzed. Margaret Dorsey gasped. "So the car wasn't stolen?" "No," Douglas admitted. Jason turned to the jury. The foundation of the prosecution's case just crumbled. The car wasn't stolen, it was borrowed. Brenner objected again. He was still found in the car without permission. Permission from whom? Jason challenged. From the man who lent the car? The only person claiming theft is someone who didn't know her husband loaned the car out. The judge said nothing. She didn't need to. Jason then called Detective Lena Harrow, lead investigator, to the stand. Detective Harrow, you mentioned security footage shows me entering the vehicle. Can you describe what's visible? A person matching your build and clothes opens the car door and gets in. Does the footage show my face clearly? She paused. No. The quality is poor. Jason handed her a still image. Can you point out the face? No, I can't. So this footage doesn't prove I was the person in the car. Did you investigate any other leads? Like Ryan Dorsey, who had permission to drive it? No, we focused on you. Jason turned to the jury. So the investigation was incomplete, and the only clear evidence is circumstantial. He sat back down. The courtroom was electric. Judge Kessler leaned forward. Mr. Carter, even if the theft charge is questionable, you still ran from an officer. Care to explain? Jason stood. Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to call Ryan Dorsey to the stand. Ryan, a lanky teen, took the stand awkwardly. Ryan, what happened that night? I parked the car near my place. When I got back, it was gone. I figured it got towed or stolen. Did you tell the police? No, I didn't want to admit I borrowed it without asking Aunt Margaret. Did you see anyone near the car when you left it? Yeah, some guy was hanging around. Looked shady. Jason turned to the judge. Your Honor, I didn't steal the car. I saw it abandoned, door ajar, keys inside. I thought it was left in a rush. I was checking it out when someone ran toward me shouting. No badge, no uniform. I thought I was being attacked, so I ran. The courtroom fell silent. Judge Kessler turned to Brenner. Do you have anything else to add, Mr. Brenner? He shook his head. The prosecution rests. Mr. Carter, do you wish to testify? Jason nodded. Yes, Your Honor. He took the stand. I didn't mean to break the law. I saw a car left in a strange position and thought I might help. I was wrong, but I wasn't trying to steal it. I didn't run from an officer. I ran from a stranger. He looked at the jury. I've spent weeks studying this case because I had no other choice. If I hadn't, I would have been another name lost in a broken system. I wanted to show you the truth. The judge turned to the jury. You've heard all the evidence. We'll reconvene tomorrow for your verdict. The next morning, the courtroom was full. Jason sat silently. Has the jury reached a verdict? Judge Kessler asked. We have, said the foreman. On the charge of grand theft auto, we find the defendant not guilty. On the charge of resisting arrest, not guilty. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Jason exhaled in relief. Judge Kessler banged her gavel. Order. Mr. Carter, you are free to go. Jason stood, stunned. Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Carter, she added, what you did was remarkable. I suggest you consider a future in law. Jason smiled. Thank you. I will. Outside, the sun warmed his face. Ryan Dorsey approached him. I'm sorry, Ryan said. Jason nodded. The system failed us both. But maybe now, it'll start changing. What's next for you? Jason looked to the sky. Law school. If I can do this without a degree, imagine what I can do with one. And as he walked away, the burden he had carried for weeks finally lifted. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning.